All right, let's get into this. It's an incredible story, really, about how a nation, Egypt, facing a massive crisis, managed to engineer this monumental solution right in the middle of the desert. We're talking about a project so ambitious, it's completely changing the landscape and, honestly, securing the future for millions of people.
And this whole story, it really kicks off with just one number, a pretty startling one, 5.5%. Just think about that. That's the tiny, tiny fraction of Egypt's land, basically the fertile banks of the Nile that for centuries has had to feed almost the entire population. And for thousands of years, it worked. But, well, things were starting to change.
So that leads to the big question, right? The kind of thing that would keep you up at night if you were in charge. I mean, for millennia, Egypt's survival has hinged on this one thing, the Nile. It's this thin ribbon of green in a massive sea of sand. But what happens when that lifeline, the very foundation of your country's food supply, starts to fray?
Right, so Egypt found itself in a really tough spot. It was facing this critical dilemma, kind of a perfect storm, really. You had climate change on one hand, and just more and more human activity on the other, and both were putting this almost unbearable strain on its most precious resources, the land and, of course, the water of the Nile.
And this whole thing created a really dangerous domino effect. Think about it. Less water from the Nile means farmers have to turn to more chemical fertilizers to get the same yields. But then, that depletes the soil, which in turn reduces the land available for livestock to graze on. The very ground that had sustained Egypt for literally ages was getting, well, exhausted. It forced them into this desperate search for new ways to feed a growing population and, keep the country stable.
Okay, so facing all this pressure, Egypt decided to look at its water in a totally new way. I mean, instead of just using the Nile to water crops, they launched this really ambitious plan. This was back in the late 1970s. The idea was to develop its aquaculture sector, which is basically just a fancy way of saying they were going to start farming fish on an industrial scale.
And wow, you can really see how well this worked right from the start. Just look at that jump. In only a few years, the annual fish production absolutely skyrocketed. It went from a modest 17,000 tons to an incredible 450,000 tons. That's not just growth, that's a revolution.
And this boom wasn't just about numbers. It had a huge social impact. It created tens of thousands of jobs, right? Both directly and in all the private fish farms that popped up. But even more importantly, all that new supply drove prices way down. Suddenly, affordable protein was available to millions of people. For a lot of the poorest Egyptians, farmed fish actually became their main source of protein. This was a really crucial first step towards food security for the whole nation.
But here's the thing. Even with all that massive growth, it still wasn't enough. The population just kept getting bigger, and the demand for food just kept climbing. Egypt was still having to import fish just to meet its needs. So it became super clear that if they wanted to achieve true food security, they needed to do something unprecedented.
And that brings us to the crucial point. Egypt needed a solution on a scale that nobody had ever really seen before. And the answer, funny enough, wasn't on the Nile, it was in the desert. Enter the Al-Fayrouz mega project. We're talking about a genuine engineering marvel designed to solve this problem once and for all.
The scale of this thing is, it's just mind-boggling. The project covers a huge area, over 8,000 hectares, and they literally carved it right out of the desert, east of Port Said, right near the Suez Canal.
So, inside this massive area, engineers built something incredible. 700 enormous fish ponds. And each one is like its own carefully controlled ecosystem, all designed for maximum production. This is way beyond just a farm. It's more like an entire aquatic city.
And the work it took to build this, absolutely Herculean. I mean, just to create the ponds, workers had to dig out 500,000 cubic meters of earth. To give you some perspective on that, that's enough dirt to fill 200 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Just incredible.
And it wasn't just digging either. They also had to move a colossal amount of rock. 1.5 million cubic meters of it, just to build the basic infrastructure, the barriers, the channels, the whole support system for this massive, massive operation.
Now this part is really cool. What's so interesting here is the clever, eco-friendly tech they used. See, if you're going to build something like this in the desert, you have to save every single drop of water. So they used this unique 3-layer system to line the ponds. There's this special membrane in there that stops water from just seeping away into the sand. And it also acts as a barrier, which is super important, to protect the ponds from any contamination that might come up from the groundwater.
So you see, this isn't just a bunch of ponds. It's a fully integrated industrial ecosystem, and it's all designed to be completely self-sufficient.
Al-Fayrouz has its own hatcheries for breeding the fish, its own mills to make their food, and its own plants for processing, packaging. They even make their own ice. They've left absolutely nothing to chance.
So what's the impact of all this? Well, the results go way beyond just putting more fish on dinner tables. This project is transforming the whole regional economy. It's creating stability, and, believe it or not, it's even having an impact on international relations. Let's talk about the people for a second. This project is set to create up to 10,000 new specialized jobs. That's a huge economic boost for the whole region, right? It's creating opportunities in everything from veterinary science to logistics and beyond.
And this, right here, really captures one of the most important and maybe overlooked benefits. Before Al-Fayrouz, Egyptian fishermen often had to go way out into international waters just to get a decent catch. And that could lead to all sorts of problems: trespassing, getting arrested, even creating serious diplomatic tension with other countries. This project helps keep fishermen in safer, local waters. It cuts down on those international incidents and helps build a more stable, sustainable industry right at home.
You have to understand, this project is a cornerstone of Egypt's national strategy for the future. The goals here are huge. We're talking about achieving complete food self-sufficiency, becoming a major fish exporter for the whole region, boosting the strategic value of the Suez Canal, and even driving development and new cities in the Sinai Peninsula. And Al-Fayrouz, it's right at the heart of all of it.
So, if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's that Al-Fayrouz is so much more than just a massive fish farm. It's a really powerful statement about human ingenuity. And honestly, it could be a blueprint for other nations out there that are facing similar challenges.
And this incredible achievement? It's already breaking records. The Al-Fayrouz project is now officially the largest fish hatchery on the entire continent of Africa. That puts Egypt right at the absolute forefront of modern aquaculture. It's a huge deal.
Ultimately, this whole project is just a testament to what's possible, you know? For a country that is so defined by its desert, to build a thriving aquatic industry literally out of the sand, that's a powerful symbol. It just goes to show that with enough ambition, the right technology, and just sheer determination, we really can innovate our way past even the most daunting environmental challenges.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. As the world's population keeps growing, and as climate change puts more and more pressure on traditional farming, could these ambitious, high-tech projects just like Al-Fayrouz, could they be the key not just for one nation's food security, but maybe for our collective survival?